Grab your cup of coffee. Sit down for a story. Let's all go exploring. Making it after 40. Making it after 40. Making it after 40.
Hello, friends, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the Making It After 40 podcast. I am your host, Lisa Rodriguez. I am an actor and writer who is still trying to make it after the age of 40. On this show, we explore what it means to be an artist trying to make it as a middle-aged person. Thank you for joining me for the first episode of 2023. We're starting things off right with my first guest, who is another dear old friend of mine, Adam Shakinovsky. Adam and I met at Lancaster University in Northern England, and he was also in Synaptic Relapse Optional with my last guest, Eric Moscopetis. Adam has gone on to be a filmmaker, running his own production company, Brew Productions in London. Adam and I discuss finding the harmony of making art from your soul versus making art to pay the bills. And we discuss operating with integrity, working with folks who are in alignment with your values, and learning to say no when those values could be compromised. Adam is one of my favorite storytellers, and he is also one of the most polite, genuine, and generous folks around. It was such a pleasure to get to reconnect with him on this level, because it's been a while. I hope you'll enjoy the show as much as I enjoyed having this conversation with him. It's all going to work out. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Adam Shakinovsky, like you said, it's been 20 something years since we've last seen each other at all, in person or on Zoom.
Yeah. I think the last time I saw you, we had gone on an epic. Oh no, that's not true. Sorry. I was going to say it was the epic drive that we did around England, dropping Kathy off and all the rest of it. We were all, by the end of it, like really tired and quite ill, but like, sun kissed and happy. But the actual last time I saw you was outside the South Bank Centre.
Yeah. But speaking of that trip, I remember that being a thing. And in my mind, like we were going to go get Dominic too, right?
Yeah.
So we were going to go get Dom. Like to me, it was such a nothing thing. Like, oh, what was it? Like an hour drive and I don't remember how long it was. But to me, being in California, well, yeah, that's just what you do. You drive an hour. It's no big deal. And I remember you asking your dad for permission to go. And he was like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And you were like, I'm going anyway. And it was like, oh, crap.
It's happening. That's so funny. That was lovely, actually, surprising. We basically kidnapped him, didn't we? Lovely.
Yeah, we did. We totally kidnapped him. We showed up at his house and took him back to yours.
Which is, when you consider that neither you or I are particularly tall, it is like the Munchkins trying to take on Gulliver. Like, we got him!
The 6'4" giant.
Yeah. He was very happy to be kidnapped, though, so which helps. It was consensual, if that's possible.
Yeah. Well, let me introduce you. This is Adam Shakinovsky. Adam and I are good friends going back to my time abroad in England at Lancaster University. And Adam has since gone on to create a production company, which I know nothing about. Eric was the one who told me. He's like, you got to reach out to Adam and have Adam on your podcast. But so, yeah, Eric had said that I should talk to you about your work as an artist now with this production company, and I'm so curious about what you've been up to since we last talked, because I mean you're one of those theater people, and you actually have used your degree to create a whole career and a life.
Man, that's so interesting. It's always interesting hearing other people's perceptions of what you do, isn't it? It's I love it, really. It's so nice because I can sometimes get swept up with the internal monologue, and so it's lovely to hear how it looks from the outside. Mm-hmm. Gosh, well, like you said, Lisa, like over 20 years, it has been eventful. So it was our theatre degrees, then film school, and then I went to work on the Noah Baumbach movie Squid and the Whale in New York.
Oh,
so that was my first job, kind of proper job in production. I'd worked for a documentary company, just kind of being an intern, being a runner, but that was like proper New York Sopranos and Sex and the City production crew, and like,
Oh, wow.
don't screw it up. Like, don't. This isn't like. And so that was my first look at like, okay, this is how it gets done,
Yeah.
which was really fascinating, really inspiring, completely exhausting. I mean, it was so low budget that it was like a little army of interns. You know, we joked about,
Yeah.
you know, you and me being munchkins kidnapping Dom. Like, in a way, there was like a load of us interns trying to kidnap a movie into life.
Yeah.
And so it was really interesting. And then I came back and I got offered a job in like a real kind of startup production company called Agile Films.
Okay.
And at the time, it was the three owners effectively, and no one else, in like a little office in Hoxton in Shoreditch. And they'd been going about a year and a half. They'd had not really any jobs. You know, there was like, I think 1 day's filming, maybe 2 days filming in the previous year. Like, it had been really, really quiet. And then we just got going, and it was really interesting because I ended up producing everything and directing some things, but it was a real cross section of kind of short fictional films for their own sake, for the love of the story, corporate digital films, recruitment films, music videos, you know, films for the British Parliament. You know, it was a real kind of mad cross section, and it was honestly exciting for the first couple of years. I think it was really exciting because I was meeting lots of interesting people, passionate people, and you know, as you do when I think whether you're acting or producing or directing, you are kind of diving in behind the lines of newspaper headlines. You're actually getting into to depth for whether it's a day or whether it's 6 weeks or longer. You actually get to live a little bit the reality of those different worlds, which is always enriching, whatever else it might be. So, but I was in much more in production. Like, I was much more like a creative producer, and I became, you know, head of, as we grew and grew and grew, became kind of head of production there. And I think I made so many lovely friends there who I'm still friends with today, and you know, some of whom I'm godfather to their children, and it's so nice. But I'd been there about 7 years, and we'd grown to about 30 people, and doing lots of really lots of exciting things. But I sort of felt like production, like I wanted to be doing more writing and more storytelling and more audio storytelling, really, as well.
You've always been a very good storyteller.
Well, like, I just love it. That's really nice of you to say it. And I didn't, you know, I would, you know, in any whatever you do in life, you can tell stories, you know, wherever you are, and that's great. You can always work that muscle. But I was just so comfortable where I was. I was like, yeah, I'm probably just going to be here. But I kind of always had a hankering to just go and write my own things and make my own mistakes and kind of move at my own pace, for better or worse. But I didn't really have a catalyst to do it until 2 weeks before my first child was born, Molly. I found out that I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Which was like a real surprise, obviously. And yeah, it was a really different thing. And so what ended up happening was I kind of didn't go into work ish for the 2 weeks before Molly was born. I mean, I did a little bit, but then she was born, and I'd saved up enough paternity that I had 5.5 weeks with her and Elizabeth, which was amazing in and of its own right. But it also made me realize that the thing that was keeping me at the production company were the people. It was the people that I loved and the people that I would miss. But I kind of took a view at that point. I was like, do you know what, though? I'm still going to be friends with those people. They're still going to be in my life. And it's not a reason to stay and keep working just the producing muscle. It's time to do it. So I did. So then, 2013, I set up Brew, and carried on doing very much similar sorts of arrays of things.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, one of my old colleagues from Agile, a lovely guy called Christian Brody, invited me to tell a story on a stage show, a storytelling show at like
Yeah.
an iconic London theatre called Wilton's Music Hall. And he called me up. It was around Christmas that year, 2017, kind of early towards Christmas. He was like, "Hey, Shaq, I'm running this show, and normally it's kind of people who are kind of more in the public eye and all the rest of it, but I just thought you'd be really good at telling a story. So there's 6 people telling a story. I'd love you to be one of them." Lise, I didn't stop thinking about it. I became so excited and obsessed. It honestly, it animated me in a way, in a very different way. I've got excited about lots of productions that I've done, but I was really switched on, and I delivered the absolute hell out of that story. I really loved it into being, and that set Christian and I off to set up another production company, which was specifically for that show, and for other kind of just television or film productions that we would creatively lead. So we wouldn't just do kind of physical production. We wouldn't just do production. We would have a hand in exec producing it, or producing it and or writing it. And that's been really, really fun and exciting.
And so that company is separate from Brew?
Yeah, so that company is called Very Fine.
Okay.
It was actually Christian founded it before we started, and then he invited me to become his partner in it. And so there's those 2 companies, and then kind of all the writing stuff that I do beside that. But that's a giant nutshell of what I've been up to.
That's wonderful. I mean, you've always been like I said, you've always been a very good storyteller, a very good writer. I remember, and I have to ask you if this was true or not, but I remember one time when we were working on devising the synaptic relapse optional.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was good. Yeah.
That was so good, right?
So good. Yeah.
I mean, maybe if we watched it now, it wouldn't be as good, but I felt like it was so good.
I did rewatch it a couple of years ago. Sorry, but anyway, go on.
Oh no, there was one time you sat me down, and I don't know if I was like hyper at the moment or something, but it was like you decided you were going to tell me this story, and you told me the story about this little boy who was playing rugby with his friends, and he fell down and he got dog poop in his eye, and you told me that they had to take him to the hospital and pop his eye out and clean it and put it back in. I was like, that's not true. You're like, Lisa, it is absolute. Look at me. It is absolutely true. Like you you are full of crap. This is not true. And you're like, I'm telling you, this happened.
So I vaguely remember being told this story.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember being told this story when I was a child by someone, but I can tell you for sure it is not a first-hand account. Like I did not witness. I didn't know this alleged mythical child who had his eyeball popped out and cleaned and put back in. There was a sorry. You make me think about it now. There was a TV show where like a guy did have his eyeball like taken out and popped back in, and had like he could. Sorry, I'm articulating this very poorly because it's so long ago now. And he was talking to camera while his eye was while he was being operated on.
Oh my God!
But yeah, my God, what a story!
Yeah, you had this attention. I don't know if you. I'm trying to remember why you decided to tell me this story, but I just remember the way that you told it was so distinct about this little boy getting his eyeball cleaned, and I would just like it stays with me because you were so like passionate about telling the story and like keeping my attention and captivating me while we told the story. Anyway,
I wonder why. How must have? Yeah, was it part of the devising of synaptic relapse, or was it just like
I don't think so.
I'm gonna let's.
I
Yeah.
don't think so. I think you maybe had some lesson for me at the end of it. You were like, and that's why we should appreciate what we have. Or I don't remember.
And that's why we don't play rugby in feces.
Exactly. That I think that is the
Don't do
true
it.
lesson.
We do. Yeah. Don't
Uh, yeah.
don't play sports in fecal matter.
So so going back to your art and your storytelling,
Yeah.
um, so what kind of do you feel like, so you've got very fine and then you've got brew productions. Is uh do you feel, does brew focus more on the commercial? Is that kind of like the thing that feeds your pool to be able to do the other fun art things? Not that brew productions isn't
Yeah.
fun. Everything is fun in their own way, but like some things are passion projects and some things are projects that are a little bit more like work. And although you can be proud of the work that you're doing and you enjoy it, it's not the thing that's coming from your soul or your creative soul.
That's a really well articulated question. And actually, it's taken all this time, so nearly 10 years, to find a way of coalescing the passion into brew and unifying them. For such a
Mm.
long time, it felt like everything that was brew was kind of pulling in different directions. So it was like
Mm.
we would do, we did short films with like John Malkovich in Istanbul for two
Yeah.
weeks, and that was a commercial thing. And then we would just do a short film because I wanted to and I loved it, and then we'd be doing uh, corporate stuff for the prison service or the government or something. And anytime we would do like a short film that I was proud of or something like that, I would look at it and just be like, how is this relevant to the people who are giving us the more commercial work? Like, how is this, you know, we did it, I exec produced a documentary, a football documentary.
Okay.
It's like, again, apart from being like, hey, that's great, I can tell people, I can talk about something interesting to my clients.
Hmm.
How does this really fit? How does it come up as one unified offering that isn't just like it's storytelling and sound quite vague and multi-purpose and a bit too broad. And so I found it very de-energizing because I felt like actually there was a certain point where I did compartmentalize things into kind of like work that I'm proud of, but isn't necessarily pure passion, and then the
Yeah.
passion stuff. I was like, do you know what though? Like the commercial stuff is only going to do what it needs to do if and what I want it to do if there's passion involved. So I spent forever working with a dear friend of mine who's phenomenal at this stuff, and she, bless her, took about 5 years of, her name's Emma Willis, of kind
Hmm.
of compounded messaging and very patient listening to very repetitive complaints from me about how I've designed everything to actually say no. They are all one thing. They are all about um, being authentic and finding authenticity, including
Yeah.
people, making space for people, creating that sense of inclusion and finding a place for people to call home. And I think that is true of most of, if not all of the work that I do. And that has really helped a
Yeah.
lot. But it's honestly, at least that was this year that coalescing happened. Like all up until then, it was kind of like, this looks like an interesting project. Let's make it wonderful. But
Yeah.
there would be a cohesive drive, I would say.
Yeah, when I was looking at your website, the one of the things that really struck me was that you talked about like I can't remember exactly the words that were used on the website, but it felt very much you, where it was like connecting people and creating stories, and I think there was stuff about like authenticity and whatnot, and to me, when I read that, I thought, well, that's always been Adam. Adam's always been about doing good in the world with whatever you have, and I do feel like a lot of the work that we did in Lancaster was about like trying to figure out how to use art to do good in the world and how to connect with people via whatever medium it is that you want to use, telling people stories in order to to help people grow or learn. And I think, you know, like I talked with Eric last week, and with Eric, you know, we talk a lot more like about like, you know, like let's burn it down, right? And that's much more Eric's mode. And because like the intention is like, let's not take ourselves too seriously. Like take the work seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. And I think with you, it was like much more about like, oh, how can we like much more of like a warm embrace with your art, and how can we heal the world with that. And so I was so excited to see that carries through, and it's still you, you're still true to you in that regard.
That's really lovely to hear, and it is the thing. It is the thing when I pull it all together. That is, yeah, that is the thing, and it's I never. It's interesting. I never really understood the phrase. You know, it's too earnest.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if like there's a big thing about like it's just too earnest, like the desire to do these things. And I think I don't know whether it was watching Designated Survivor that I was like, oh, I now understand what too earnest means.
Mm.
And so it is, I think, like you say, with our art, with our hopeful gift for storytelling, it's got to be compelling. Like it's got to be entertaining. You know, we've both got children,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you've experienced this as well. Like anytime I'm like, guys, listen, this is a thing in the world. This is something to think about. These are some ways you could look at it. And then I will literally get this.
Adam is
Like,
just staring at me blankly.
yeah, sorry, I'm just staring at Lisa blankly. I will just get two children sitting there, looking at me, waiting for me to finish talking. Like that's it. But you know, if it's a story which makes the same point, and then they laugh their heads off, and then they replay the characters again and again and re-say the lines again and again.
Yeah.
You know, the message actually sticks and becomes part of their own vernacular and part of their own perspective. And I think, you know, we see so many opportunities where people think they should sound a certain way, they think they should say a certain thing, and the second that they kind of second guess themselves and their own experience is the moment that it just becomes something that it's not of them, and so it's not going to stick with anyone. And so it is about finding that deeply personal kind of gloriously them thing that lights them up, and that will then be contagious to anyone that they're talking to.
Yeah, that's great. And then I imagine you kind of, in a way, have to do that with a corporation. Like you kind of, when you're working with a corporation, you have to find out, okay, well, what is the essence of whatever it is? And how can we carry that through to make sure that you have the message? I think there's something, and I'll let you speak on that, but I think there's something, how do I want to phrase this? That could be like really important with this type of work when you're working with corporations, be it a commercial or your corporate videos or whatever, to bring that humanity and that authenticity, because like so much of advertising for so long has just been like sell, and of course then you're kind of, are you manipulating people by pulling at their heartstrings, whatever. But at the same time, like sometimes, you know, like there's when you bring some of that truth into like commercials, and it could touch some people and make a difference in their worlds, and not just like taking advantage of their what's the word, they're wanting to buy stuff and accumulate stuff, you know?
Totally. Yeah, massively. I mean, a lot of the work we have done for a long time tends to be about helping people build their team, and whether it's recruit their team or keep the team engaged, and whether it's kind of shake up the kind of ethical practices of those teams. So often we have, you know, let's say a tech giant that we're working with, and they're like, yeah, you know, at the moment we've really got a diversity issue, as in we don't have any. We want to get there, and we want to make films about, you know, how diverse we want to be. The problem is the only people we can feature aren't diverse. So like there's a lot of that. So obviously to avoid a film where there's like 20 white guys going like, we just really want to be diverse. It is it is important to kind of sit and talk and work with those people and say, look, you can't just pretend now that you've always been diverse and that you've always been LGBTQ plus positive. You can't pretend those things. Don't, because not everyone has anyway. A lot of people, big corporations especially, haven't been, like, in the same way that I haven't always been and still am not perfect by any means. But like, you have information now. You've got the desire to do something good. Own up where you are on that journey. This is the problem area for us, and this is what we're looking to kind of focus on.
Yeah.
And that, you can feel people in meetings, kind of their shoulders relax, and they're like, okay, yeah, we don't have to try and pretend to be something we couldn't possibly back up with fact.
Yeah.
And that is helpful, because it's, you sometimes you run the risk of being on shoots where everyone's pretending like it's all, like it's already sorted. And then the interviews you're going to get that day aren't going to be reflective of reality, kind of what is needed and what's lacking. So having those conversations with people who have a genuine desire to help change those companies, move them forward, and also, and this is the crucial thing, and where we still think there's a lot of work, is with people who can affect change at a bigger level. That can allow the people. If we're going to interview, say, 20 people in Germany, it's helpful for us knowing that the person who's running that project from the client side is really letting us have license to get real, authentic experience of that person's perspective and life, rather than just like, these are the talking points, this is what we want to say about the company. And that is helpful. But there's always a tension. There's always a tension, because everyone wants to present themselves in the best possible light of transition, right? We all do. And I think it's good to represent the best genuine intention to transition, but not to confuse it with, like, because we've always been brilliant.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I think has been really helpful. But I think also we've become, I think there was one year in particular when it was a really, really busy year. And at the same time, I was on statins for my diabetes, and I had a shoot in Istanbul, and then a shoot in Rome. No, sorry, shoot in Milan, and then 4 days in between there was a shoot happening in Brazil that I was helping to organize, and then immediately after that was a shoot in Istanbul, and we had lots going on, and it was me and one other person in the company at the time. At that time, I was on statins for my cholesterol for the diabetes, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was reacting very, very badly. And there were days when I would just wake up and feel like I just couldn't move. Like there was a point in time where I went at like 6 a.m. to do my walk around the lake, and as I parked up, I was like, I can't open the door. Like, I just don't have the physical will to do it. And people kept coming and saying, like, could you do this job? Could you do this job? And ordinarily I'd be like, this is great. We're busy, we're popular, more and more work's coming in. But I remember as each new job popped up, my heart just dropped. I was like, oh God, not more work. I don't want any more of this. And I did everything that we needed to keep going, but I really stopped actively pursuing and growing stuff. So we went through kind of a quiet patch. And in that period, like we took a brief from a company that is not especially ethical company.
Okay.
As an understatement. We didn't get the job, which is probably even worse. Like we bitched and didn't get it. Oh, we're not even good enough to work for the devil. And and then, which is fortunate now that we then didn't do that job.
But in hindsight, it's a
dodge. It's a blessing. Bullet.
Yeah.
But it also, we then, kind of regrouped and were like, do you know what? We've always just kind of pursued a generally ethical line, but let's pursue a specific ethical line, and like let's really clarify who we will and won't work with.
Yeah.
And I think that's helped as well.
That's
Like,
huge. Did you find that your business grew once you made that decision,
I
or
found that it grew in a way that we were much happier with.
yeah,
Because it meant that also, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some, at that particular company, that the people there were incredibly friendly and lovely and seemed very happy. But we also have found that in brands that are less mercenary and actually genuinely are trying to, to connect with people, not just to sell something for the sake of selling it, but hopefully because those people need it and find it either
yeah,
useful or enjoyable. It has meant that the people that we work with, generally the actual account handlers and global heads of whatever it is, have been significantly nicer to deal with,
yeah,
and that you tend to be talking to people who hold themselves accountable for what they say and what they promise and what they'll do, and everything that goes on.
hmm,
And in that capacity, you can actually, and this is one of the things that we did so well with synaptic
yeah,
relapse, is that you can, if you can just focus on the work, if you can just put the energy into the work, you can kind of move really quickly in exciting directions. If you do you
hmm,
remember that piece,
yeah,
synaptic relapse, we spent God knows how long going around in circles, excavating, our
yeah,
minds, excavating different ideas, really chasing them, different kind of mediums, really, and very, very different, some of them,
yeah,
and really getting very, very lost. And I remember, I don't know if this is your experience, but I remember there was a certain point where I was like, we haven't got it yet. We don't know what we're trying to, we don't know what we're trying to say. We don't know what we're
yeah,
doing. But at no point whatsoever did I have any doubt that we were going to come up with something that each of us would make a significant contribution to make it really good, which is exactly what happened.
yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely felt that. I remember there were times where it was like, well, where are we going? And then at some point we figured out, oh, it comes back around and it ties all together. And
Yeah.
I want to rewatch that now.
There's a lot more swearing in it than I remembered there at the time.
Oh, really?
We swear a lot, a whole lot, Lise. Whew, real potty mouths. But
Well,
yeah,
we were
so
so edgy, right?
this is
So
it.
that's
Do you know,
swearing is
no one had
edgy.
sworn in theatre up to that point. We were
Ever.
the first people to do it in the north
It's
of England. They didn't know
yeah.
what hit them.
It's 20-year-olds. We figured it out.
Whew, yeah. That's so funny. Yeah.
Uh, I want to touch back on what you were just saying because I find that so one of the things we in our one sentence catch up before we started recording, I didn't mention that when I moved up to LA, I ended up working in property management, commercial property management. So I spent
Okay.
15 years managing high-rise buildings in downtown Los Angeles. So a very corporate world, working with lawyers and attorneys, and those were my tenants, banks and stuff like that. And I've since I took a break after I had Julia, and with the intention of just pursuing acting full time. And with inflation and stuff, I've had to go back to work, and so I've taken on an assistant property manager job now. So I'm working full time, but I don't have to be on call all the time, which is nice. But my point being is that working with a company and with people that are ethical and that are kind and respectful makes or breaks your experience. I've worked with all different kinds of folks in my property management experience, and I really find that like whether or not this side hustle, this day job is sustainable often depends on the people that I'm working with.
I'm sure.
And I think that's huge, and that can be your own coworkers, that can be the tenants, that can be your vendors, or other people like within the organization. And especially lately this time around, it's something that I keep coming back to is sometimes you'll run into someone who's having a bad day within your organization, or a tenant, not necessarily the people that I work with directly, that we treat each other pretty kindly, but every once in a while you run into someone, and I just like it kind of drives me crazy because I just think, hey, we all hate our job, right? We're all having a bad day. Can we just try to be kind to each other and like let's get through this together in a way? Like at the end of the day, we're on the same team. And I had another guest who talks about this, that there is no them and us, it's all we. And she talks about that in terms of when you're auditioning for someone for like a voiceover job, because she specifically does voiceover. So when she takes the copy and she's, working with a director or auditioning for someone, she thinks of it as there is no us and them, it's only we. So we are working on this together. This is, I am the voice, they are the director, but we are on the same project and we are one team. And I like to think about that in all aspects, whether it's business or it's, I'm sure with your team, with production, and you're approaching the client, it's the we. And I think when we think of that in the we can all make a better product in the long run.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree. That's really well put. It's so true. And it's funny what you were saying in terms of meeting people who are having a bad day or who are difficult. And I think some of the work that I'm still doing now, and I think a lot of the work for us generally to do, is to accept that it's happening, accept that it's there, but to not let it affect us as much. And to, I think I've been, I think we both are. I know I certainly am very much an empath. Mm-hmm. And so when I found someone just kind of going doolally, I just been a bit like, what? This person must be in terrible turmoil to be behaving so atrociously. Must be something dreadful that's going on. Like I must take this on because they must be. And and then spent like 2 weeks staring at the ceiling, being like, I'm so depressed. Like this is awful. And and long after they've either got over it or just continuing to function with whatever levels of general rage and cosmic insecurity that are kind of operating. I found myself, with like years of hangovers, having like fantasy. Like I sometimes see, you sometimes see, unfortunately, people without homes kind of walking through the streets, muttering or kind of shouting to themselves kind of loudly. Mm-hmm. And I remember just thinking before that, when I was a kid, I was like, oh, that's really sad. And now I'm like, I'm really not that far away, like from that. During like in terms of sometimes my inner monologue, and I'm like, there is something that that there is some healing and focus that needs to be done about finding a way to either finish those conversations or to really let them go, because my experience anyway is that some of them really do carry on years after the event in ways which are helpful to zero people. Except possibly for dramatic writing, in which case it comes in incredibly handy. But I could write other more interesting stuff without that.
Without torturing yourself emotionally. I this is something that I have loved about turning 40, being over 40, is that I do feel like I'm learning to let stuff go at a faster pace. I'm able to kind of put up my little bubble, and like when someone is not kind, I can usually be like, okay, that's them, that's not me. I'm going to try to let it go. And like you said, maybe I'm like mumbling and talking to myself for like an hour or whatever, stewing over it. And then I just try to let it, like give yourself that time to process and then let it go. And I'm learning to only have people in my life who are in alignment with me, who fit that, and starting to realize, oh, I don't have to say yes to that just to be kind. I'm allowed to also set those boundaries. That's been a huge thing, is learning to set boundaries with people.
That's great.
I didn't have that when I was younger at all.
That's so good. That's incredibly good. I wanted to ask you about the side hustle of acting. Obviously, I not obviously anything. I say obviously a lot. I find that I want to pursue so many things. Oh yeah. That at any given time I'm feeling guilty about X amount of things that I'm neglecting while I'm focused on one thing. How do you How do you reconcile that?
I don't know that I fully do. uh, what I've gotten really good at, especially since I've gone back to work full time, I've gotten really good at time management and figuring out how to schedule things. But also, my partner has to be on board with that. My husband has to be okay with picking up the slack when I'm not available because I'm taking an acting class for 8 weeks, or because I need to, record this podcast at 7 a.m. So I'm kicking him out of the bedroom and telling him like, okay, I'll see you in an hour. Get the kids ready for school. I mean, I'm not demanding of him like that, but he's okay with getting on board with those things. But
Nice.
what I do find is that there's all these projects that have been stewing in my brain for like 2 years. I've written one pilot um, that I really enjoy, and I've submitted it to some pilot festivals and things like that.
Cool.
And so I feel really good about that. But then all the other pilots and scripts that I have in my head that are unfinished, it's really hard to be okay with them just sitting there. I'm worried that I'm going to lose them, that somebody else is going to, because I do think that there's a little bit of the thing where when it's in the ether, someone else can grab it and write it as well. Of course, it'll be different from the way that you write it, but I worry that I'm going to lose it or I'll never get to it. And so that's been a big thing that I'm trying to figure out. And especially now that I'm doing this podcast, because the podcast train just keeps going. I'm producing one each week. So I'm constantly working on 3 at least, because I'm scheduling people for an interview for like, I try to do 1 interview a week. So I'm trying to schedule someone for the following week for the interview. I'm doing an interview that week, and then I'm editing one. Oh no, I'm working on 4, because then I'm also promoting the one that just came out.
Okay.
So it's this constant train that's moving to
That's
try
a
to,
lot.
yeah. And so I'm trying to figure out, well, then when do I have time to write? Because that is something that I'm passionate about. The acting is a little bit easier to manage because when the auditions come in, I work on them, or I can decide to do an acting class. And so at least once a week, I'm working that acting muscle. But finding the time to write when I'm also working full time is really hard. And I just started working full time in September, and I haven't quite figured out how to fit that in. We're coming up on this holiday break where we're going to spend some time with my in-laws. And so I'll be taking some time off work, but all I can think is like, oh, I wonder if I can find some time to write while I'm at their house.
That's really cool. So good, Lise. Like, it sounds you've got a system. It's so impressive. The podcast alone, that production is so impressive.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it really is that consistency. I mean, so the storytelling show that Christian and I do should have been a podcast 5 years ago, 6 years ago when we started it. And people are always like, "Oh, there should be a podcast." Like, yeah, and we just haven't done it. We got offered a deal with Spotify a couple of years ago, did a pilot, didn't work, kind of went our separate ways. But we easily, and we were like, make a date every week, in we go, one, bam, 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 bam. And we just, we tried a couple of times, and we've got lovely podcast equipment, and we recorded quite a few, but we just haven't kept the consistency. We really haven't. And
it's hard.
I mean, so the fact that you're doing it is incredible because, and we had our annual kind of get together and catch up about things for next year. Mm-hmm. And we did the thing that we always do, which is like all the things that we want next year. And then like, right, what's achievable? What can we actually do?
Mm-hmm.
Concrete, what can we commit to? And I was like, do you know what? Even if we record 1 podcast a month and have first season of 12 at the end of the year and do that ongoing, that feels like, and the format is actually just him and me talking. We don't even need to talk to anyone else.
Yeah.
It's like, that feels sustainable,
Yeah.
And then we actually have something that we're proud of, that we can do, that will feed into the show, which will feed into the book, all of those things. To hear you doing it every single week, as well as everything else you're doing, Lise, is I hope that you reward yourself internally for maintaining that consistency, because that is really something.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. That's huge. Um I don't know, it's something that I really wanted to do and I really wanted to create, and it comes from a place of wanting to connect with people and feel a little less alone in this journey of trying to make art and wanting to make it my career and make a living from it. And so one day it's going to happen.
Well, I think that the beauty of it is that, I know I sense that part of that is like the finances that will allow it to happen
Yeah.
in a more focused way. So I take your point very much in the spirit that it's meant. I suppose what's really lovely about this is the priority that you've given it, the consistency that you're lending it and breathing life into it. It's one of those things, I'm certain, that in whenever it is, whether it's 6 months or 3 years or something, people are like, oh, have you heard the making it after 40 podcast? Be like, oh no, I haven't heard of it. Is it new? Be like, no, it's been running for like
Yeah.
6 years. They've got like 1,000 episodes.
Yeah.
And it's that thing where you will have, you will have this is the thing that makes it happen. But it's really funny, man. I obviously I've done a lot of stuff and survived, but there's still always a part of me, and it's probably imposter syndrome, that is like, am I just a little child playing dress up? Is that like, is that what's happening? Is this okay? Is this okay to do this still?
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
for
we,
sure.
it's not, and like we've got with Very Fine, we have a co-production deal with Fremantle to develop a TV drama that we've been working on for a year and a half with them. It's now going out to broadcasters. We've got the pilot episode written. There's some talent attached. Like it's super exciting, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really exciting. It's moving unbelievably slowly, and there's a million things. This we've been told to expect at least another 2 years before the pilot's even made, if it gets made.
Yeah.
It's like this. I'm just expecting at some point to just be like looking around the room of people and to be like, you, the bald guy, what exactly? That's okay. We're good for people. We don't need. You're okay. Thank you for everything you've done so far. Like, and me just being like, oh no, of course. I'm so sorry to have be here, which is like so mental after having worked on it for so long and helped shape it and everything. But honestly, that still applies to a number of things that I do.
Yeah. Well, I'm so impressed with everything that you've accomplished. I mean, like, look at all the stuff that you're creating all the time. That's so amazing and so wonderful. I think for me, my imposter syndrome is that, like, I haven't made any money from it. So it's like, oh, well, does that really make me a professional, or does that really make me, I haven't been validated by that. But what I'm starting to embrace is, like, just because someone hasn't paid you for it doesn't mean that it's not professional work or worthy or whatever. So that's
Totally.
where I'm at.
We were interviewing in New York. We were interviewing Francisco Clemente. I'm sure I'm getting his first name wrong, but the artist.
Mm-hmm.
And it was people who kind of either knew Andy Warhol or were artists kind of within their own right. And one of the questions to him was like, what was it like making the decision to become a starving artist? And he kind of really reacted to the question. He was just like, you don't make a decision that I'm going to become a wealthy artist or a starving artist. And you are just an artist and you make art. And I was like, it's a very well-established sentiment. It's not particularly revelatory, but it is something that I forget from time to time.
Yeah.
And that we all can be like, if it's not being validated financially, then what, does that mean we are X or Y? But it is, it's so funny. But just by continuing to do it, we just get better, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah. Something that I've started, like, in terms of what we were just talking about, I've also kind of started to come to just, like, I've been in this phase up till now. I've been in this phase where it's like, okay, how do I book? How do I make something? How am I going to make money from this? I'm going to do audiobooks. I'm going to do voiceover. I'm going to do commercials. What am I going to do? And in the last, like, this is brand new. In the last couple months, I've just kind of come to this place where it's like, I'm just going to make my art and hopefully something comes for it. And until then, I'm working a day job, and that's okay. And I'm going to just trust the process. And I've accepted that I can't push the universe to give me what I want, and I can't push the timeline to fit my expectations. And I just have to make it and see what happens.
God, that's such a healthy. It's such a healthy place to be. I yearn to be more consistently there, because honestly, I was talking with a friend of mine this week on this very subject, and saying how I so often I like a piece of paper, like write these different, the TV drama, the writing, brew, very fine, all these different things, the stage show. Where do I start? What do I do? What should I focus on? Also, I'd like to do more audio stuff, all the things you just mentioned. And you just look at time, you're like, there isn't time for all these things. There isn't time to push all of these things forward at all if you try and do all these things. And not even to do half of these things to push them forward at meaningful, consistent, sustainable pace. And yet it's a trap that I keep falling into. And this is actually an unhelpful thing to say, but to myself, but I sometimes think like my brain doesn't work as it's supposed to, as it should do, because everyone else seems to manage to accept the capacity, the scarcity of time for what it is, and go, okay, then I'll focus on maximum 2, 3, hopefully 1 thing. And it is still something that I really struggle with. My friend who I was talking to was just like, she does the exact same thing. And it was actually a very hard conversation, because she is a really phenomenal singer, like such an incredible voice. And the songs of hers that I've heard that she's put out there, I found just incredibly moving.
Yeah. And
she's actually not 40 yet, but she was saying, actually, I think I'm just gonna knock it on the head. I think it's not gonna happen for me. I'll keep doing the things that I'm doing, but she was reaching that point of feeling like a lot of her contemporaries, her friends, are now at positions where they've gone from junior positions at whatever company to like making really good money and going on great holidays and mortgages and houses and all of that stuff, and finding that external feedback really, really hard.
Yeah.
Which I can totally relate to. I think that is one of the things, that's another thing to constantly remind myself, look, everyone's on their own different journey. Like you were saying, they do the art, trust the process. You can't wish to have someone else's brain or live someone else's life. And actually I wouldn't. I think that is probably my hardest thing. Like if I could find a way to not be constantly planning and just doing the work, I think that's still something that I'm trying to get to.
But I think the planning itself is okay. It's okay to plan, like, I want to have this project out the door, or like I want to have this script at this point in the process by this time or whatever, because otherwise you're never going to get it done. I think what I was doing was that I was pushing for an outcome. Okay. And I don't I don't get to decide the outcome. Yeah. And especially in this type of work, there's so much of where like, it's not up to me. I can audition for 1,000 things and never book any of them. It's not up to me whether or not they're going to choose me. But what I have been like, that's where the writing comes in, is, okay, well then I need to make my own opportunities, because maybe people aren't writing for me. Maybe there aren't roles out there that are currently being written that fit me. So then let me write my own stuff. But even in the last, like month, I've been starting to feel like maybe that's just where I should put my focus, is is on the writing and worry less about being on the other side of it. And maybe my strength is in the writing. Because I've been really, I don't know, I've you know how you have those times like where you get flooded with ideas,
Yeah,
and yeah,
constantly.
that's what's been going on with me is I have all these ideas that I've just been floating around with and not finding the time to do anything with. Like maybe I've written an outline or two, but
Mm.
haven't actually created. And what I've been really missing is collaborating with people. Like I love doing this podcast because I get to talk to so many people, but I miss collaborating and going back to synaptic relapse. I loved that. And I've taken like pilot writing classes where the teacher operated as like a writer's room. I love that. I feel like that's where I do great is like somebody presents an idea and pitching more ideas on top of it. Or something else that I want for the new year is I want to find a writing partner because I think I really thrive with that collaboration.
It's such a good idea, and I'm really with you. Like, I mean, that is one thing, isn't it? If you write, but you also have the heart of a performer. Like today, I got into the office really early. I had a really productive morning up until 12, and then I started to feel really anxious and overwhelmed. And I was like, "What's going on? Like, it's been going well. I've been doing stuff I need to. Like, why am I feeling so kind of palpably overwhelmed?" And I was like, "Oh, I haven't spoken to anyone. I've spoken to no humans. There have been zero chats."
Yeah.
And Christian and I went on our very first writers retreat in Italy last year. Never done it before. Everyone else there had done loads. Like had been everywhere. It was such a positive experience. The people there were all much further developed in like how much they'd written and the level of their writing, but they were all really welcoming and really helpful. And we formed a writers group after the fact. And so every 2 weeks now we get together on a Monday and everyone submits, anyone who wants to submit something, you read it out and then people feed back. And it's only kind of up to 1,000 words that you can submit so that everyone has time. But it is so helpful, not just to get the specific feedback, which it massively is from these very smart people, but just again, what you said at the very beginning, Lisa, about just feeling less alone, feeling like there isn't, that actually that time can begin to just feel like it's going in one line. And actually, the last thing to say on that is one of the things that I have found helpful, just for learning and getting things out, is writing to a competition deadline, and that has been helpful to at least generate completed drafts of work. However developed.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, so I'm gonna start wrapping things up. So I always ask people 2 questions. My first question is, what advice would you have for someone who is looking to start their career in production or making movies, making projects?
At any stage of life, just
at any stage of life. It can
at any stage
be
of life,
young or old.
Yeah, I think. I think if you know in your secret heart what it is that you want to do, the most specific version of what it is you want to do. So I met someone last week she's just starting out. She was like, "I want to produce social justice documentaries." I was like, "Well, that gives me a huge amount to work with because now I know exactly who to put you in touch with, who the conversations you should be having." So if you have a specific thing that you want to do, don't go for a shadow version of that.
Yeah.
Because it won't make you happy. Like if I would say generally, if you want to be an actor, don't become an agent necessarily. Like you're very close and you're helping other people and develop, and that's great. It's just not the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's I think there's so many people who don't kind of take that leap to go direct to do the thing. Like I would say much more, to you, rather than going and being, I don't know what, at like a big podcasting company, but actually not producing your own content and your real voice. I would say, you're doing what my advice would be to someone, which is, what's the thing you can do do that. Do that
Yeah.
more. If your bent is a bit more kind of general and you just want to generally get into making movies, then look at the companies that you are interested in, the movies that they make, and send in a resume and be relentless. Follow them on LinkedIn, respond to stuff, write your own stuff, and really, really put yourself out there relentlessly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a big part of it, right? Just taking a chance and putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then my next question is, what does making it mean to you, maybe now versus when you were younger? Yeah. What does success look like to you?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I didn't really know. It just meant like that energy of collaborating with people who I'm excited about working with, where there's mutual trust and respect, and it's fun and purposeful, and you are so excited and obsessed about the work that the days fly by in a way which kind of lights everything up. And
Yeah.
that really is still what I would consider making it, getting to do that, getting to do that. That is really making it, getting to do that without a feeling of anxiety about finances. I think that's really making it.
Yeah.
Having protected
Yeah.
time in a day to pursue projects with the excitement and being able to take creative risks and not having to need to try and force an outcome, which as you pointed out, we can't do.
Yeah.
So I think that's making it for me, is having that incredibly privileged time in a day like this. So like this feels like making it right now.
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
a real conversation about something that that I feel passionately about with someone who I love.
Aw. Well, I think we should just leave it right there.
All right. Catch you next
That's
year.
great. That's great. Where can people follow you or get in touch with you?
So you can get in touch with me, adam@brewproductions.com.
Great.
That's my email address. You can follow me. I mean, you can follow OneTrackMinds.uk on. That's a storytelling show. So that's the only place I'm really on Instagram is
Okay.
OneTrackMinds
Okay.
UK. That's a storytelling show.
Yeah.
But I'm on LinkedIn a lot now. That's
Okay.
where I'm at. So just Adam Shakinovsky, you'll see me writing about any number of things.
Okay. Awesome. Adam, this has been so lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. You can follow Adam's work on Instagram with his production companies at OneTrackMinds and at Brew Productions. That's BRU Productions. Or if you'd like to reach out to him personally, look him up on LinkedIn. And all of this is linked in the show notes. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. Be sure to follow the show on Instagram at makingitafter40, the number 40. And if you'd like to catch up on what I'm doing when I'm not podcasting, check out my Instagram at Lisa Rodriguez. Lastly, welcome back, friends. Thanks for listening and have a great week.